into innovative sustainability policies to promote a conducive environment to operate. Please welcome the panelists to stage now. Head of Internal Democracy at RISE, Mzansi, and member of the National Leadership Collective, Boitumelo Mpakanyane is here with us today. We're also joined by Khwezikazi Windvoel, Municipal and Project Finance Manager, South African Presidential Climate Commission. Boitumelo, come up. You've got a mic. Yes. And let's also welcome Dr. Sibongile Mazibuko, Deputy Director, Green Economy, the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition up here. All right, welcome to my panelists. Boitumelo, we're going to kick off with you and just talk about policies. How is it that policies can shape trade and business?
Thank you so much. I think they obviously have a massive impact, but I think we need to start by being very, very honest about the context in which businesses have to operate in South Africa's economy. In 2022 at the World Economic Forum, in Davos, the phrase polycrisis was coined, and we exist in the polycrisis. We have experienced the decay of just about every single meaningful public institution except SARS. We have seen incredible growth in energy insecurity that has killed people and businesses. We have seen the inability to import goods, move goods across the country, which has completely hiked the cost of living, the cost of doing business in South Africa. So I think we need to first start by being very, very honest and mindful about the context in which businesses have to function in South Africa. The implication, however, is polycrises give rise to poly opportunities, and I think the JET IP is an example of a poly opportunity. It presents incredible opportunities for us to activate new green industries and effectively change the face of South Africa's economy. But our crisis isn't just a policy issue. We also are plagued by a policy management issue, one, but secondly, a massive implementation gap that informs our inability to effectively to give life to South African policy. And I think we need to be mindful about the policy shortfalls in the JET IP itself, in the sense that it exists to what it says on the box is that the just transition will leave nobody behind, right? That's what it says on the box. But ultimately, there are several policy shortfalls in the JET that kind of look like they might leave communities behind. We don't have a significant enough focus on skills development. I think of the total 97 billion required, 1% is allocated for skills development, which bodes horrible prospects for the coal-based for communities that exist around coal power stations that will ultimately be repurposed for pursuing the just transition. We're also a little bit alarmed at the reality and the financing model, with the big focus on debt financing and not enough of a focus on grant financing. There's a phrase in economics that talks about the first sin in economics being having a big aspect of dollar denominated. What has benefited us as South Africa can you hear me?
Yeah.
Has benefited us as South Africa for a very, very long time is that a lot of our debt is denominated in rands, right? I think about 10 to 15% of our debt is in dollars, which means that when we don't have to deal with the currency fluctuation complexities that other emerging economies have to deal with. I mean, if you look at Mexico and Argentina, on every 10 years, they have this exchange crisis that effectively collapses their economy. But we're now talking about lending 97 billion rand from European capital markets. Has really pretty frightening consequences for the fiscal cliff that we're looking like we might be heading off of. So there's a few policy gaps that I think we need to be able to plug, but it's not just a policy issue. It's also a reality that we don't have we've lost the levers that we used to have to be able to make strategic infrastructure investments to kickstart our economy. We spent 300 billion rand on 2 power stations that were supposed to cost 150 billion rand that still don't work today. And as a consequence, we have load shedding that has killed people and businesses. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Sibongile, yeah? Policies, they can be very key in terms of enhancing trade relations, but how have we seen this playing itself out locally?
We have seen this from the perspective of the DTI, because we have actually very much involved with the African Continental Free Trade Arrangement or arena. In that, we see it very key because we are looking at the continent as having about 3.1 trillion in that is a single market of the African continent. And then also, from our side, we also looked at what we call under the AFCTA, the GTI. I know it sounds like it's a car, it's not. It's the guided, it's the guided traded initiative, whereby we say to member countries, they must actually input into the products that they want to put in there for trading. So we're looking at those things from that particular perspective. So from the South African perspective, we are also looking at the issues of around about the REP. So where in countries are actually bidding towards these renewable energies. We're now in bid stage number 7, and we're seeing wind coming back to the fore, and this is what is currently happening from the side. And then we also, from using the AFCTA, we were participating in road shows because those are key, because when you are saying to a layman, there is this AFCTA, what is it? Yeah. Let us put it out there for people to understand what it means and how would it translate for goods and services for this country, for this continent, and how we need to compete globally.
Mm-hmm. Can you talk to us about, Khwezikazi, where it is that we could improve our policies in order to create a more enabling environment for trade and for business?
Thank you for that question, Carol, and good afternoon or morning to the audience. So I had plans to talk about, the Constitution and how it lays the basis for socioeconomic rights and everything. But I think after the last or the previous panel, I think there's been really a pressing need to talk about the Just Energy Transition Investment Plan. I think it's been a point of contention because even with this panel, it's been mentioned a couple of times, and I feel sort of obligated to sort of shed a bit of light because I think there are a bit of, there is a bit of a misconception around what it is, what it plans to do, what it is not. And what I'd like to say is that, first and foremost, the JET-IP is not an investment plan. It is not an investment plan that says that these are the monies that we're going to get from international donors, from international capital markets and such. What the JET-IP seeks to do, or seeked to do, was that it seeked to identify what sort of sectors, that exist within South Africa can we, from a policy point of view, use as levers as we are transitioning into the green economy or the low carbon economy. And what was mapped out is really the catalytic policy maneuvers that needed to be done for us to ensure that as we're transitioning to net zero by 2050, at least in the short term, we do have clear targets of what needs to be done for us to get to that point. And we keep talking about, I know there's the question around the monies that are coming from the international donors, the JET-IP of initially $8.5 billion and now $11.6 billion. And I think another thing that we need to just understand there is that even with that, the policymakers within the country had a determination of what needed to be done. There was an offer that came, but what happened subsequent to that was that the policymakers then went back and said, but this is not sufficient. And I do want to also speak about a paper that we released last year as the Presidential Climate Commission that actually seeked to map out climate finance flows into the country, and perhaps this could give people a bit of comfort, with this whole question around international donors, a transition that is country-owned and country-led. And what we found with that paper is that on average, between 2019 and 2021, more than 80% of the climate finance flows that were flowing in South Africa were actually from domestic markets. So I don't think that we need to look at this just transition as though this is something that we need grant funding for. South Africa is actually a very capable financial market. I think we've shown quite significantly the power that we have in actually implementing this just transition as it is, as a country, and keep it country-owned and country-led. And I think what we really want to talk about and start talking about is how do we get ourselves to a point where, as policymakers, we're actually creating an enabling environment for the collaboration to take place between business and other regions, like what we've spoken about the African Trade Agreement. How do we make sure that at the very fundamental point of policy in South Africa, we are giving heavy signals to the business environment and other trading partners to say that South Africa is ready for this transition. We want it to be country-owned and we want it to be country-led.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We want you all to, round of applause. We also want you guys to become a part of this discussion. So towards the end, we'll open up to the floor to get one or two comments on this very topic, or even some questions very shortly. There is a microphone in the audience. Is there a roving mic? So is there a roving mic now? Okay, yeah. So a little bit later on, we'll open it up to the floor as well. Boitumelo, let me go back to you here and talk about policies that South Africa has. What policies does South Africa have in order to create that enabling environment for trade and business in the country?
Absolutely. So we've spoken about the Continental Free Trade Area, which has the ability to unlock incredible potential from a regional trade perspective, and I think even from a kind of geopolitical perspective, place Africa at the forefront of regional geopolitics. So it's definitely something that the organization I come from is in massive support of. If anything, I think we need to be strengthening these platforms for multilateralism and the like. I think in addition to that, I think the JET IP is one that we're particularly excited about from an economic development perspective. But ultimately, like I said before, it will fundamentally depend on our ability to effectively implement it, right? I think what we hear quite often in the political space is that South Africa's issues aren't necessarily just policy. There's an implementation gap that we need to account for, and there are a lot of things that we need to do in terms of being able to free up, create space and freedom for incredible public servants like I have to my right to be able to exist in a depoliticized environment, to be able to do their jobs and effectively implement policy. But we'll never be able to do that until we are able to capacitate the public administration in a way that allows us to one, depoliticize the public administration, but secondly, professionalize it. Because I think what we're realizing in our political journey as Rise Mzansi is that the issues that South Africans have to contend with on a daily basis are fundamentally interlinked. We can't treat economic issues as purely economic issues. We can't treat public safety issues as purely public safety issues. In building our manifesto, we went to over 120 towns and cities, and what people in Mkanduli will say to you is, I'm scared to start a business because of the safety implications, right? So when we talk about policy and when we talk about policy creating an enabling environment, we need to be talking about a lot more than just high-level policy around, NDPs and Vision 2050s and all of these things. We need to be talking about the things that create conducive environments for people to be able to make meaningful investments in their own communities. When we talk about leveraging foreign direct investments and all of these things, all of those things are great, right? people, we are a small but open economy that exists in a global stage, and we must continue to be that. But we also need to incentivize South Africans to be able to make investments in their own communities. And at the moment, the risks are too high, and it's simply too unsafe. But I think ultimately, like I said, we need an effective public administration, an effective public service that is depoliticized and has the ability to create value for South Africans. We need energy security. We need to fix SOEs like Transnet. I think, economists. I heard an economist talking about how between Eskom's decay and Transnet's decay, as well as Prasa over the past 15 years. Those three SOEs cost us about 3% in GDP growth per annum. So we want to be talking, we're talking about economic growth and job creation in this economy that grows at 1% per annum, 1% year on year. And until we can get to a point where we can fix these fundamentally critical institutions of the state, we're going to have a very, very limited capacity to implement any shiny policy interventions. What we have to contend with as South Africans is a leadership crisis, and until we deal with that, we will never be able to leverage the talents that we have in the public administration. And there are exceptionally talented people in the public administration, but we need to be able to make sure that at a political leadership and governance level, we clean up quite a few things there. Thank you.
Yeah. Sibongile, Khwezikazi, I saw you guys both nodding as you're listening to Boitumelo. You can add your thoughts and also tell us how it is that we will and can or should adapt our policies to create an environment that is more conducive to business prosperity.
I'll start with the last question, because we need to be very consistent with our policies, because the other thing that we are having right now is not so much about how beautiful the policy has been written, it's how much of it has been implemented out there. Can the people actually resonate with that kind of policy that you are actually indicating that it's there? For example, right now, a lot of people don't understand that the AfCFTA, we have 55 member countries in the African continent with Eritrea. Usually they say 54, it's 55 with Eritrea. Then the 47, they've actually deposited into the African Free Trade Area using an instrument of ratification. So we are moving in there, right? So the space is there's a willpower a little bit from countries. But from the side of countries saying that these are our products that we want to put out there for the continent, so that when the continent trades amongst itself, we are having only 8. So we need more countries to come in. So you have your Tunisia, you have Morocco, you have Egypt, but we still need countries to come to the fore and say, okay, this is what we are going to trade, and why are we trading in that? For example, now, from the previous speakers, they were actually speaking about the EV. A lot of people don't understand that there's an EV white paper that has been signed, and these vehicles are going to come into the continent, and we still have not, we are not ready as a continent. So there's an EV white paper that has been signed, and we are attending all these EV conferences, and yet people don't understand, what do you mean when you say we are having an EV? Where are we going to get the batteries for those EVs? The batteries are coming from here. You're gonna have to go to the DRC, you're gonna go to Zimbabwe, you're gonna go to Madagascar. Those are the countries that you're going to, so that is why we need trade cooperation, not just trade cooperation, but we need the necessary investment that will need to happen in this country. And then while we are doing that, we're also roping in the smaller countries to say that let them not feel smaller, because we'll have the bigger economies swallowing up the smaller countries. So that's where we are.
Thank you to the panelists. So I just really want to just emphasize this idea of, systems and existing within a context of, the region in Africa, and the importance of realizing the interconnectedness of these different countries. So when we look at something like sustainability, the just energy transition, the thing about things like climate change is that they don't recognize borders. So for climate change, it's not going to say, okay, I'm only going to, cause this much havoc here, but these guys, because they are a bit, it doesn't work like that. There are no borders. So we need to actually understand the context that we live in. Yes, we are this major, player within Africa, but also, yes, we are cognizant of the fact that we are bound by rules of being global citizens as a country and everything, but the understanding of our context as a country, understanding that we are a country that is battling with the triple challenges of poverty, unemployment, and inequality, understanding that we still have autonomy, even though, we are from the global south and we are impacted by stuff that has been done by the global north, I think is going to give us, some sort of agency. It gives us the chance to actually determine what happens, what do we do next. And this understanding of, the regional context is very important. And perhaps these are the platforms that we need to start, questioning ourselves on. How do we create a social impact, social compact between government and business? Because where is the disconnect? If government and the policymakers are saying, yes, we're creating all these lovely policies that are going to facilitate trade between countries in Africa, but business is not actually understanding where do they plug in, where do they fit in, and how do they leverage those policies, then I feel like these are the conversations that we need to start interrogating ourselves, that are we perhaps working in silos as a society? If we are working in silos, that means that we can't leverage the power of social compacts, the power of understanding that what you do affects me too, and what I do affects you too, and therefore we need to come together for the greater societal good. So I just, let me just stop there, Carol. Thank you.
Okay, no worries. Would you like to lend your voice to the discussion? Is there anyone in the room that would like to add something or even ask a question at this juncture? Just raise their hand. All righty. Boitumelo, what processes, right? What tools, what practices should we be tapping into for this innovative policy design?
So I think the innovation needs to be the innovation has to exist at an implementation level, at least for me. We talk a lot about the ability for the JET IP to create opportunities in communities where communities around power stations like Komati that are due to be repurposed for the just transition. But ultimately, and this perhaps maybe speaks to the skills development point I made earlier, until we get to a point where we have made significant enough investment and made a real policy commitment to be able to make sure that at the point where we do start this journey of decommissioning coal-fired power stations, until we get to the point where we have made actual interventions to make sure that the communities that exist around these power stations are equipped to lead the transition, then I think our ability to fully extract the most amount of value out of the JET IP is going to be significantly diminished. I think another system that has the potential to allow us to extract very, very real value is public procurement, right? Public procurement in South Africa has been an enabling force to create many successful Black and colored and public people of color owned businesses. Obviously, it has its issues. But when you start to explore solutions around cleaning up public procurement, digitizing core aspects of public procurement to make sure that the entire supply chain and the value chain that we want to exist around these new ideas and these new industries, if we have the ability to clean up those aspects, then there's immense potential for us to change the face of our economy, to move away from being the world's most unequal economy and to create very real value for communities that exist and have the potential to produce the goods and services that a just transition, energy intensive economy is going to require from us. So we know that we already know and have a sense of the kind of industries that are going to be bolstered by our move from a just transition perspective. We know that it's going to mean a boom for the steel and aluminum industry. We know that it's going to mean a boom for various industries across the board. We need to be very, very mindful now about making those investments now in those industries, in those communities. But from a systems perspective, it's going to require that we clean up a lot of aspects of how the state interfaces with business, and specifically cleaning up public procurement and using public procurement for the purpose that it was intended, to allow the state to procure from businesses, but to place the state at the forefront of catalyzing the growth of new businesses, and specifically businesses owned by Black people and people of color.
Yeah. Do we have any examples here in the room of forward-thinking strategies that have catalyzed economic growth? Are there any examples that you can give us? Yeah. Don't be shy, you can raise a hand. Okay, we've got at the back. Boitumelo, please give Claire your mic, yeah.
Am I going?
Right at the back.
Hi everybody, my name is Sarah Motwani-Sibetula from Tepiso Branding Solutions. So in our business, we are not just a typical branding solutions business. So we are on a mission to empower our clients to embrace ESG goals through the selection of our conscientious branding solutions. So that's just our strategy from SMME perspective. So if there's any corporates in the house that would like to partner with us, then I'm here. Thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Nope.
Yep. Yeah, we've got right at the back, Claire. Yeah.
Raise your hand. Where am I going?
Did you raise your hand, sir? At the back. Yes, yes. Claire, there we go.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen. My name is George. I am an owner of an SME called Student Movers. So as student movers towards the comment of economic growth, we've had the privilege of working with Imagined Earth. Imagined Earth is a reverse vending machine company. It supplies these machines which recycle waste and then get taken for sorting. So what's happened with us is, as a small moving company, we've benefited from the partnership that we have with Imagined Earth, where we are able to have cash flow outside of the moving aspect of our business, where we maintain and sort of service this machine in the whole of Gauteng. That has become quite a it's been very good towards our business, looking at it in terms of what you're trying to say. So right now I'm here as a moving company, but however, we are part of something bigger than where we are currently positioned with. It really has created a large opportunity for us in this sustainability sort of topic that we're talking about.
Thank you so much. Yep. Yeah. Okay, we've got a question up front, Claire. Go there and then there. Just have our last two questions.
Okay, who's raised their hand?
Yeah.
There you go. Sandile.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Sandile Chabalala. I've got a question for all the panelists, and I think it's something that I kind of saw happening on stage, but I'd like to know how they can foster everyone in the room to be charged around the issue of collaboration and partnership. So I think a lot of the time in South Africa, we see that we do a lot of things in silos, especially on issues around sustainability and impact, which fundamentally affect people's lives directly. So we're not necessarily dealing with spreadsheets or balance sheets, but we're dealing with people and the issues around socioeconomic well-being of people. I'd just like to know, how do the panelists see each other or see everyone in the room working towards a common purpose, and how do we drive policies? Because policies essentially are meant to be geared towards directing where resources should go, right? But then no single entity or no single person can achieve the outcome of a policy with just by themselves. You need collaboration, that's why companies, source, because they need suppliers in order to achieve a certain goal, right? So I'd just like to know, how do you fundamentally strengthen the ecosystem of sustainability in this country by actually enabling policy to be much more simpler, maybe? But I'd just like to just hear, how do you see collaboration and partnerships happening? Thank you.
Lovely question. I did want to close on the issue of collaboration, because I think, coming out of the conversation that we've had and just observing other panels as well, I think for me, it is really such a pressing point that there is a need for collaboration in this country. I think if you look at any successful country in the world, there is no government that has been able to advance a country on its own. There are no businesses that are able to advance a country on their own, as well as society. We're all part of, this ecosystem, and for it to work, we need to realize what each of our roles is and basically pursue it to the best of our ability. And this also goes back to the point I made around, social compacting, really understanding where you are within the ecosystem, doing what you can, doing it well where you are, and making sure that you are collaborating with the people around you within that ecosystem. We do speak about, in the Just Transition Framework, we speak very heavily on the 3 types of justices that underpin just transition. And one of those justices is procedural justice. And when we talk about procedural justice, really what we're saying is, yes, it's so nice to say, don't leave people behind, but what does that mean in terms of stakeholder engagement? What does that mean in terms of identifying who the different social partners are when you're crafting policy, and making sure that at each and every point of that policy development, you're engaging with those social partners. So this is something that we really, really try to do as the Presidential Climate Commission, and this is something that we're trying to bring in other departments as well, and say that, listen, when you are developing policies, this is how you bring people along, this is how you ensure that they are thoroughly engaged and they are thoroughly a part of this development. And I think my colleagues would like to add on.
I think also from your end, Mr. Shabala, you were saying that you wanted easier access to these policies. We were working with the presidency. There's an Operation Pakista waste stream, right? Whereby we identify companies that want to work with the presidency, and then we're looking at different waste streams. And then the people will actually have to come in and just make a pitch, because a lot of companies that nowadays, that you have to pitch your business, right? Let your voice be heard. That is where we are at this point in time. And then we are also working with the Department of Environmental Affairs, wherein we are actually reviving the waste sector policy. So we want it to be signed, especially on the renewable tires under the Waste Bureau. So you have to get into these spaces, find yourself in these little spaces, and it's just raising your hand and say, this is who I am, this is what my business is about, and then so that somebody else sitting in here can actually fund your business.
Thank you. I know my job is supposed to be to disagree with people who work in public sector institutions, but in this instance, I don't. I think what I am going to kind of highlight is the kind of partnerships that we are. And multilateral arrangements and agreements that we are involved in as a country, and that I think are important. We obviously are a member of BRICS. We are a member of the African Continental Free Trade Area. But I think BRICS is interesting in the sense that you know, China is the biggest manufacturer of beneficiated goods on the planet, right? What we are trying to, the value that we are trying to extract out of the just transition is to grow our manufacturing sector and our potential to beneficiate goods. If we don't start navigating trading blocks like BRICS as trading blocks and stay out of weird geopolitical squabbles that exist inside that trading block, we'll never be able to extract the kind of value that we need to as a country out of forums like that. So I think, just to kind of take a different angle on the question, I think the kind of strategic partnerships that we should be pursuing as a country at the diplomatic and an international level are specifically those that align with our foreign policy interests, that align with our domestic interests of being able to grow our economy, being able to grow strategic sectors of our economy, and be able to transition to a decarbonized economy, but one that has incredible potential to beneficiate the raw materials that are abundant in our soil. But yeah, just a different take from me. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we've run out of time, but there was one more common question. Yes, Claire?
Is it for? Over here.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Khwezikazi Lutsuli. I run a company called Allegro Enterprises. I am an accountant by profession, but I'm actually an entrepreneur, having started this business. And our business works in South and East Africa. And my question is really around the title of this panel discussion, which is about innovative sustainability policies. And really around that innovation side of things. What is the multiplicity of voices that sit at the table when policies are set? Because I think from my own lived experience, you know, we can talk about like an AFCFTA, for instance, which is not a new policy, but to actually now say, let's trade, let's actually bring goods from Ethiopia, from Rwanda into South Africa. There's so many issues, right? How do the goods get here? So we're talking about infrastructure. I need to talk to a supplier in that country. There's, you know, connectivity issues. There's currency issues as well. So there's a lot of policy that's set, but when you are doing business, it's actually a different game. And I'm just asking, where are the gaps in the innovation around how the policies are set, and who actually sets those policies, and what is that lived experience to really know? Because if we're talking about innovation, we're talking about problem solving. How do you solve a problem that you don't really know firsthand? So I'm just trying to see, how do we link those things? What's your view around that? Thank you.
Yeah. Would like to, yeah?
Sure. So the gaps are definitely self-evident. I think the gaps exist in the implementation gap that I spoke about earlier, in the sense that the people who have to contend with having to operate businesses in these contexts are the people who have to deal with the consequences of policy, but don't have a seat at policy-making tables. And I think it speaks to the importance of taking communities, taking key stakeholders along for the ride in creating policies that ultimately bind and inform the nature of the contexts that we exist in. So I think ultimately the answer exists in collaboration. If there's going to be any innovation to be done, we need to kind of streamline the ability for key stakeholders to be able to make strategic inputs into policy as well as into implementation plans.
And also, Khwezikazi, from the ground up and to the ground down, the importance of using our embassies in these various countries, it's going to come in handy, because they reside there to give you the necessary advice, because we have economic attaches in various countries for South Africa in those various countries. So you can use that, and don't just go there alone and just hope that you will swim and then find yourself a commercial lawyer. But I know with small, medium enterprises, it's a difficult terrain, right? So you allow those people at those embassies, they are getting paid for that. That is your taxpayers' money. So you have a right to go to the embassy and say, I want to start a business in Ghana. and you know how difficult it can be. Or I want to start a business in Nigeria. So who do I talk to? So they need to do the research, a little bit of research for you.
Thank you so much for your input as well. A big round of applause for the panelists.